Hi everybody, Mark here with the latest of our lesson newsletter video tips. And today we're just going to talk a little bit about chipping, and I'm just going to quickly take you through the difference between a standard sort of a low chip shot and a higher trajectory chip shot. So on the right hand side here is the higher trajectory shot, and on the left hand side is the lower trajectory, or what I would call a standard chip shot. And most of us have been taught, quite a lot of times the standard basic chip shot method. It's one of the first things you get taught when you start playing golf, and that's the one on the left hand side here. And really, this is a little bit like it's like what I call it. It's like a kid's game of spot the difference. And already you're probably looking at these two pictures, and you've already picked up on some differences. On the left-hand side, the standard chip shot setup, and many of you will, you've learned this before, but we'll just quickly go through the main points. What we see here is just a general look of the body looking like it's leaning slightly towards the target. So if we take a line between my two heels and I draw it through my chin, or the middle of my chest, you'll see that my body median line looks like it's leaning slightly sort of to the right as we look at it, or towards the target. Whereas over here on the higher trajectory shot, if we do the same thing now, you'll see that that line it's pretty much vertical. It's certainly not leaning as forward as much as the picture on the left. That's the first thing that stands out. The second thing that stands out is the angle of the shaft lean at setup. So for the normal chip shot, we have a little bit of shaft lean leaning forwards like this, but for the high trajectory shot, we set up with almost a vertical shaft. It's a tiny bit of shaft lean, but it's pretty much vertical. And the other thing that's worth noting here is if we just take a line down from the outside of the left shoulder, a vertical line, you'll notice that on the picture on the left, that line is more towards the target, right? Which just is another way of measuring that really the lean of the body. Now, because of this setup, what we see is the loft of the club. Because of the shaft leaning forward and the body leaning forward, the loft of the club is something like that. This is a crude measurement, but it's just a bit of a guide. And over here, what we see is the loft of the club is significantly more laid back. So we've got more loft built in to the setup of the shot on the right-hand side than we have on the left. So they're the setup differences. Now, and really that's probably the main thing that we need to talk about today, is how we set up differently to this shot. Because most of us, when we set up to a chip shot, we all just automatically default to this version over here on the left. But when you want to hit the higher shot, you've got to make these adjustments over here on the right. So on the left, the weight's probably favoring the left leg 60%, maybe 70%, compared to the right leg where it's about 40 or 30. Over here on the higher trajectory shot, it's almost a 50-50 distribution. It might be just ever so slightly favoring the left leg, maybe 55-45, but it certainly feels like, it's pretty even. So they're the differences with the setup. Now, during the swing, the goal with both of these shots is to try to return the shaft to about the same angle at impact as to what we had at the setup to the swing. So on this shot over here, we'll see that we put a line here, there's the angle of the shaft forward, and if we have a look at the shot, we go through little pivot. This is only a 10 meter shot, 10 to 15 meter shot. We come back, the weight's going forwards, the handle comes back, and just before impact, the club's just above the mat, and then I hit it now, and there we go, there's the shaft, just a fraction after impact. The shaft is leaning exactly the same amount forward as it was at the setup to the swing. Now over here on the right, we do the same thing. There's our shaft there. and whoops, start again. We go back, similar length backswing, come through just before impact. Oops, sorry, just before impact now, and then the next frame. Now we haven't quite got the same frame as the one on the left. It's just after impact, but you'll see just a hair after impact, the shaft is certainly, it's pretty much dead vertical. And it's the angle of the shaft here, the difference in the angle of the shaft, which produces the two different trajectories. Because the shaft is leaning forward over here on the left, which de-lofts the club, the ball comes out on a lower trajectory. Over here, because we're not leaning quite so far to the left, and we've set up to the ball differently, when we return the shaft back to a more of a vertical position at impact, we've got more loft on the club and the ball comes out higher. Now, there's one thing that I want to talk about here. There's one little technical piece here that we want to discuss that we do differently during the swing with these two shots. On the left picture, and I'm sure you've all been taught this many times over the years with your chip shots, on the left picture, you'll notice that at impact, or just right on impact, the left wrist is dead flat. And just after impact, that left wrist stays pretty much flat, like that. The difference with the higher trajectory shot is that we need to let that left wrist just break a little bit, because if we keep the left wrist flat, what's going to happen is that the shaft's going to be leaning too far forward and the ball will come out on too low a trajectory. So you'll notice now when we do the same thing on the right hand side picture, as we come into impact, they're looking pretty similar at the moment, but just as we get near impact, we just let the left wrist just break a little bit, and we take away these lines, and you'll notice already there's a little bit of a difference here, and particularly just after impact, you'll see just here on the standard chip shot we keep that left wrist flat, but over here we've just let that left wrist just break a little bit, and it's that slight letting go of that wrist angle that helps us achieve this vertical shaft angle rather than the forward leaning shaft angle. So on the higher chip shot, it's okay just to let the wrists, just let them go just a little bit through impact. So you can see here the difference as I roll back and through. On the left hand picture, the wrists stay fairly, almost frozen. But on the right hand side, they just break a little bit, just a little bit. And we keep pivoting through, and the result is, if we do these lines here, I'll put a little dot here on the ball here, little dot on this ball, and then we go through and we take another dot just as the ball exits the building. So there versus there, and we join those lines up back to the ball where it was at the start. Whoops. There versus there. You can see that there's about a 10-degree difference there in the trajectory of the ball. And the picture on the right, it landed at about 10 meters and it rolled about 2 or 3 meters after that. And on the left-hand side, the ball again landed at about 10 meters, but it rolled out to about another 6 meters. So that's the difference. The one on the right produces a much more of a soft landing shot. The one on the left will roll a bit more. So I hope that goes a bit of a way to showing you the difference between the high and the low shot. And I think you'll find if you just put those differences into play when you're out on the course, you'll be able to hit that sort of nice high chip shot around the green. So good luck, and hope to see you at the club soon.